Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Obviously, quick housekeeping things. If you could just keep your microphone and your camera turned off throughout the webinar. If you do have a question as we run through, just pop that in the chat function. We're going to keep it short and snappy today. We've allocated 20 minutes for our presentation and then 10 minutes at the end to run through those questions. So just pop those in the chat function. I'm Kirsty McLaren, and next to me is Nikki Walshaw. We run recruitment agency McLaren Recruitment, and we specialise in recruitment from all levels, from administration to chief executive and everything in between. We work across all sectors, and we're particularly well known for our expertise in the non-profit, membership and professional association space.
Thank you. And joining us today is Craig McAlpine and Gordon Holmes from My Career Brand. Craig founded My Career Brand in 2011 to empower individuals to their career journeys. Craig's coaching helps clients articulate their value proposition, develop job search strategies, and polish their professional profiles, including CVs, LinkedIn, and interview skills. This ensures clients approach the job market with clarity about their unique purpose and motivations. Craig is also engaged as an executive coach, helping his clients to navigate challenging roles and stakeholder engagement. Gordon is an experienced career coach who specialises in helping people gain clarity about the direction in which they would like to take their careers. He has written My Career Brand's career direction and development planning and What's Next coaching programs. He enjoys helping people successfully navigate their career changes.
As you know, today's webinar is focused on doing your due diligence as part of your job search. So as per the slide, we're going to cover firstly a job market update and understanding where you're at in your career and how you got there, setting yourself objectives for your next career move, identifying what will help and hinder this move and how to break through those barriers, and action points, followed by our Q&A. So before we hand it over to Craig and Gordon, Nikki would like to provide you with a brief job market update.
Okay. So, the job market is still pretty tough out there for most people. However, we are starting to see some green shoots of activity, which is really encouraging. And there is an increasing sense in the recruitment sector that things are slowly on the improve. Job listings seem to be fluctuating. After 3 months of steep decline and then last month's 4% rise in ad volumes, job ads declined 1% in August. So a little bit all over the show at the moment, but trending towards an improvement. There was a notable drop in some of the larger industries such as accounting and trades and services. Even so, we are starting to see an increasing demand in some pockets of the market, such as hospitality and tourism, healthcare and medical, and education and training. Applications per job ad, which have been on the rise for 10 months, rose a further 3% in July. So while we are seeing things slowly starting to improve in terms of the number of job opportunities out there, competition for these is still really high. So being really strategic in your next move and undertaking your due diligence thoroughly will really support you to best position yourself to make your next step. So more about that, over to you, Craig and Gordon.
Thanks, Nikki and Kirsty, and hello, everyone. We've said the webinar is about due diligence, and there's 2 occasions where you do due diligence. The obvious one is job search, but we advocate a second one as well, and that's thinking about where you are in your current state. How did you get to this point? And doing due diligence about this before you make any decisions about whether you might change your role or not. So it pays to understand how you got to the point that you have. Has it been an intentional career that you've had? Have you planned it? Or has it been ad hoc and by chance? And what reflections and insights does that review provide to you? What's gone well? What could have gone better? What have you learnt about yourself, your needs, and your preferences? We can't undo the past, however, we can learn from it and use it to help us make informed decisions going forward. And doing due diligence about how we got to where we are now helps inform us and make better decisions. The average person spends about 80,000 hours of their life at work. That's a phenomenal amount of time. That's 40 hours a week, 40 weeks a year, and 40 years of work. So it's really important that we manage our careers as best as we can. Craig, anything to add on the current state?
Yeah, I think the important point you raised there, Gordon, was the piece about due diligence being both sides. So I think that's really important, particularly in today's market, making sure that you don't just jump ship for the sake of it, but looking back or looking internally as well.
Yeah, when the market's so difficult, it does pay to be informed about what you're doing before actually taking actions and then not having any regrets. So having reflected on how you got to your current situation, think about your objectives going forward. What do you need? Are you enjoying your current job? Are you growing and developing? Are you being stretched, learning new competencies and skills? What impact is AI going to have on your job and work? There's some LinkedIn research that shows that by 2030, the skills needed to do our jobs will change by 68%. That's an enormous number, 68%, and that's less than 6 years away. So are you keeping up with developments in your occupation or your profession? Are you being well supported by your manager and employer? Are you on a track to achieve your career goals? And what does need to change? What do you need more of or perhaps less of? Have you talked with your current manager about your needs? Would making changes to your current role help in this current challenging market? Do you need to change roles with your current employer, do a different type of role, or perhaps seek a promotion? Or is it time to leave your current employer, look for another similar job, seek a promotion, or perhaps retrain? So if we move on from objectives, what are the benefits and derailers that you could encounter if you're changing jobs? Firstly, the benefits. Will making changes to your job or seeking a new job provide more job satisfaction? Will it be better for your well-being? Will it grow your skills and develop you further? Hopefully it will pay more if you make a move. Will it support your career brand in a positive way? And will it support the career path and direction that you wish to go in? So those are the benefits that you could encounter if you're making changes. But what could be the derailers? And there's a number of them that could get in the way of a successful change. The first one is not being able to articulate a strong reason for leaving your job. Any prospective future employer is going to ask you that, so you need to have strong reasons. You also need to have good achievements to showcase the work that you've been doing in your current job. Have you got those lined up? Another derailer could be not having professional go-to-market collateral. By that I mean, have you got a value proposition that's clear? Have you updated your CV? Is it impactful? Have you got a LinkedIn profile that's up to date and targeted at the types of roles that you wish to pursue? All of these need to be impactful and targeted. Another derailer might be that if you left your current employer without a job to go to, how long could you afford to be without a job? Because these periods between jobs can knock your confidence, especially if job hunting takes a long time and you find the market particularly difficult. It's hard not to become a little despondent and a little desperate. And you could be forced into compromises, which could be detrimental to your career brand. So another thing to think about. Another derailer might be not having recruitment consultants advocating for you. Kirsty, Nikki, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things you talked about was being able to explain your reason for moving on from a role. And I suppose as a recruiter, and employers do the same, they're trying to assess that push versus pull factor that's motivating you to look at a new opportunity. And I think being able to really clearly articulate in a constructive, positive way the reasons for looking to move on, but also being able to talk to the pull factors, what it is that's really drawing you to the opportunity you've been interviewed for, so that it doesn't look that you're just being pushed out of your current role for either because you want to leave or the organisation wants you to leave, but rather it's about what's drawing you to their opportunity. I think it's important to be able to cover off with an employer.
Yeah, I always in my corporate career always asked questions searching around the push and the pull factors, and both needed to be strong. You didn't just want to hear that somebody had not liked their previous role, so that's why they've turned up at you. You need both parts of the push and the pull to be clearly articulated, as you say, Nikki. Another thing is not having an established network ready. That could be a derailer for you too. It needs to be in place to help introduce you to jobs in the hidden job market. This is particularly important at any stage, tapping into that hidden market, and it's even more important the higher you go in your career. And then finally, in the next job, a derailer is not getting the sector, employer, or the job right for you. And that could be a mistake that you regret at a later time. So all of those derailers need to be considered, as well as the benefits. So next then is, how do you break through those barriers and derailers? Your best option at this time might be to work with your manager and stay within your current role rather than go into a challenging market. That's one of the options. So there's 3 types of changes that you could make to your current role if your decision is to stick where you are, and these changes can enhance your current role. So the first is changing the number, type or natures of your tasks. So for example, changing your tasks, you could be an accountant creating a new method of forecasting that makes their job less repetitive and enhances their job. A second type of change might be changing the nature or extent of your interactions with other people. So for example, a software engineer offering help to co-workers as a way to have more social connections and teach new engineers, so enhancing their relationships in their jobs. Or the third way is changing perceptions of your work through reframing. So for example, a process improvement analyst seeing their work as improving customer experiences is a different mindset from viewing themselves as just a number cruncher. So thinking about the meaning and the purpose of your job and reframing that in a positive way. So those are 3 changes you could be making to your current job. Or if you're changing job, then do really good due diligence on the current employment market first before making the decision to leap. Prepare good collateral to go to market. So as I mentioned before, LinkedIn, your value proposition and your CV, amongst other things, and career coaches can help you with that. Or establish relationships with recruitment consultants before you ask them to actively go to market and advocate for you. Don't just turn up and ask them at the time that it suits you to find a job. Establish those relationships beforehand. And on the same vein, establish relationships with your network of people. Build that network so that you can tap into the hidden market, and do that before you need to tap into the job market so that it's there ready to help you. Also do thorough due diligence on job opportunities that come up so that you make really informed decisions and reduce the risk of getting it wrong. Does the opportunity align with your needs? Is it a good fit with your career goals, with your personal values? And does the organisation have a culture where you can perform well? And if you secure that great new job, then when you're appointed, develop a really comprehensive onboarding plan to make a good first impression, help you navigate the changes and challenges you will encounter, and increase the chances of success. As you know, you only get one chance at making a good first impression, so that's another way to mitigate some of the derailers. And having broken through the barriers and derailers, it's now time to turn to actions. Craig.
Thank you very much, Gordon. I think Nikki and Kirsty sitting in here, when candidates actually appear in front of you and you have that conversation with them, a lot of what Gordon has said in terms of the due diligence must be sort of like music to your ears, really, when they've gone through that process. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really imperative to make sure you've done that really thoroughly before meeting with an employer. You might want to talk about some of the examples that you had.
Yeah. I was recently chatting to someone. It's quite a simplistic example, but might get you thinking about some of the questions that you might like to ask when in front of an employer or considering a job offer. I was recently chatting with someone who had moved to what they thought was going to be their dream job, and they lasted only 6 months in that job, and the reason being the culture was terrible. They had come from a really great culture, and the organisation they were going to was really well known, so it didn't really occur to them to sort of dive into the detail around the culture. I think they did ask, what's the culture like, or what's the environment like? But when she reflected on perhaps what she could have asked differently, it was quite detailed questions that you might not necessarily ask up front, but things like how do the different teams, it was a finance position, so there were a number of different finance teams. How do those different teams interact and collaborate? And the answer was they don't at all. They're really siloed. How do you celebrate, or do you celebrate staff birthdays? They don't. They didn't even acknowledge them. Or how does the team interact together? Do you do things as a team like the daily quiz, for example? And they don't. It's all very head down, no chatter. So simplistic questions and quite detailed, but ones that possibly could have affected her decision to take that job.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Gordon was saying, it's really time to start acting now. So before you actually go to market, putting what you've heard Gordon and Nikki and Kirsty talk about into actions. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you heard Nikki and Kirsty there talking about unprepared candidates, and the opposite reaction to that can be quite brand problematic. So it's very important that you make sure that you do your due diligence before. Be clear on your goals. So know those goals and be firm on your why. Why are you here? So often an employer during a recruitment process will ask you, the recruitment consultants definitely will be asking you, why are you looking, and so on. And unless you've got that sorted out, then it's really difficult. So if you're making that move either internally, and remember what Gordon was saying there about due diligence, making sure that the opportunity is not staring you in the face, so that internal opportunity as well. Get up to date with your CV. If your CV isn't up to date today, now, then you need to act and act quickly. But be sure about what you're looking for. So framing that CV for where you want to be rather than where you have been, or just where you've been. So I'd highly recommend that you, and not just because we are career coaches, that you do engage with somebody to be able to flesh that out. Know your value proposition. Okay, make sure that you can back it up, you can evidence it, because you can say you could do a whole lot of things, but unless you've got examples, then that's a problem. So again, action, make sure that you can actually evidence your value proposition. Your LinkedIn profile, as Gordon said, make sure that that's ready and to go. And there's more to LinkedIn than just putting in content. And again, you could contact Gordon if you like and have a talk about your LinkedIn profile, or even with your recruitment consultants. What is their perception of your LinkedIn profile? Get that first before you're actually ready to go to market, because once you go to market, people are going to be looking at your LinkedIn profile. If you are thinking of going externally for a new job, make sure that you're prepared to do your due diligence there as well. So establish those relationships with recruitment consultants. They're a great source of information. But set up about 30 minutes, if you like, to have a quality outcomes-focused conversation with a coach. So making sure you get that clarity through that independent view or lens of the world. So a summary of the actions discussed today would be a robust, achievable, I'll just get that through that slide, a robust, achievable career plan. So making sure you've got a what, by, when, by date. If it isn't written down, you aren't going to do it. Well, that's what the research says. We make sure that we get things written down. If you need to, you can co-opt your support team. I'd highly recommend that. So identify your champion. Looking for a new job, it's absolutely more than likely you're going to get turned down for particular roles which you won't understand. For I know at my career brand, we spend a lot of time on role alignment and capability matrixing to make sure that we have our clients having a pragmatic view, an objective view of where they're going to go. So with that in mind, just make sure that you've taken note of those actions and the content that Gordon and insights that Gordon and Nikki and Kirsty have shared with you today. Get them written down. And now we'll go to Q&A. Nikki and Kirsty, have we got any questions there?
Let's just have a look. Okay. There are many people who promote writing CVs or helping with a LinkedIn profile, and it can be a challenge to sift through who the best person company is. What or where is the best place to start? My career brand, of course.
I can perhaps answer that one if it's okay, Gordon.
Yep, sure.
I think it is really important. I know when I am actually receiving calls and inquiries from prospective clients, that I understand who you are as a person and what you need. So, for example, for every referral that my career brand has coming through, we will make sure that the right coach is assigned. So I think it's not just the company or the organisation that you need to look at, you need to interview the coach as well, or talk to the lead coach, and so they can give you some guidance on that. This is a long-term thing. I know, Gordon, a lot of our people will come back to us later on as well. So you establish a very strong bond with that person in terms of their career. And I know, Nikki and Kirsty, you'll be referring people through to various career coaches and so on. And it's really important to you and to your brand that you're referring through to the right people.
Gordon, you mentioned that you should get recruiters to advocate for you. How do you do this?
You need to have an established relationship with them well in advance of needing a job. So find the recruiters in the sector that's of most interest to you or your profession, and approach them to establish a relationship with them so that they know who you are. Keep in touch from time to time with their agreement, so that they know you and then will advocate for you in due course when you go to the market. And back to you, Kirsty and Nikki, any additional suggestions?
Yeah, no, I'm quite right. The only thing I would add is just to really emphasise the importance of making sure that you're connecting with the right recruiters. It pays to really do a bit of, again, due diligence on the sector and skills area that the recruiter works in, and that they've got the networks and relationships with the sorts of clients that are going to be of interest to you. If you're really targeting work in the private sector, there's not a great deal of point spending lots of time investing in a relationship with a recruiter that works only in government. So it's about making sure you're really clear on what work you're wanting to target, and then making sure that the recruiter and look, build relationships with a number of recruiters. You don't need to just focus on one, because there's lots of work opportunities out there, and recruiters work in different patches. So just make sure that it's really targeted and appropriate to which the type of opportunity you're seeking, really.
I'll just throw in there that coming back to that previous question about choosing your career coach, I think it's really important that the career coach has an affinity with and can talk to the roles that you're associated with as well.
Are there any specific tips you have for a job seeker whose previous role was disestablished, redundancy?
I would start by acknowledging that it's the role that's gone. It's not a reflection on the individual. And I can speak with that, having been through 3 redundancies in my own career. So it's the role that's disappeared. I think you need to develop a story and get that clear and try that out on what has happened, and be concise about what's happened if you've found that quite difficult and it's still quite emotional. So prepare your story, practice with interview skills as appropriate so that you can convey what's happened in a reasonably unemotional way with a clear story.
Is not having a LinkedIn profile a derailer, in your opinions?
I think it is. It's just so predominant everywhere, and even if you've got CVs with recruitment firms, it will be assumed that LinkedIn is up to date, and that's where everybody will go and have a look, either recruitment firms, hiring managers, people on the interview panel. So I think it's part of your going to market collateral, and that you need to have a really good LinkedIn profile. And as Craig mentioned, it's not just static. It's not just about being a digital version of your CV. LinkedIn can be so much more in terms of growing your career brand and growing your network, and hopefully growing job opportunities as well.
I think the important thing here too is that a significant number of roles and recruiter engagements may be through LinkedIn. So actually that network, LinkedIn is part of your resource and your network. So maybe it's not so much a derailer of the due diligence process. What it could be is a derailer of you being found. That's a challenge. So what I would say there is, if you want to maximize your opportunity, then LinkedIn needs to be a part of that. Otherwise, you're deliberately shutting out quite a significant channel today.
Yeah. And it also demonstrates a willingness to keep up with new technologies, and that you're demonstrating a growth mindset and keeping up with advancements and changes in technology and ways of operating. I think it's a good look.
There is actually some people who have a fear of social media. I would just like to say that LinkedIn is not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not Pinterest. And there is security that you can apply to LinkedIn. So your photograph isn't necessarily shown, or you're only connected to your first degree connections. So it's a lot more controllable and a lot less viewable, unless you make it so, than say something like Facebook.
Mm-hmm. There is an attitude towards not employing over 60s compared to younger people. Any advice on this?
I coach a lot of people that experience challenges landing jobs when they're a bit more mature and more experienced. There's two things happening. One is that there can be some prejudice and bias out there. We tend to hire people like ourselves. That's how our brains are wired. But people with a lot of experience and skills bring wisdom and a whole lot of wonderful benefits. What I have found is that often, because people have so much experience, they're not clearly targeted on the sorts of roles that they're seeking. And once we get clarity about the specific types of roles that they seek, and then orientate all their go-to-market collateral towards that, then they do secure jobs. And I've had lots of people in their 50s and 60s securing jobs when we've worked together on that basis.
A tricky situation I'm currently in is when you don't have a current job, but a few more months of redundancy money to live on and a few job applications in the pipeline. How do you make that crucial decision of saying no to one job without knowing for sure if you get the other? Yeah, that is a really tricky situation. I think it's about being really transparent with the people that you're applying for jobs through about what other applications and things you've got on at the same time, and asking really good questions to get a good steer on the timeline for decisions, and trying as best you can to line up processes and understand what the timelines are. Sometimes if you're weeks away from getting an outcome from a role you really want, and you do have another opportunity that's offering you a job right now, you're probably not going to have the luxury of keeping the one that wants to offer you the job on hold for 3 weeks. So sometimes you do just have to make that tricky decision. But if they're close enough in timelines, it can be worth calling the other employer to find out what their timeline for a decision is, and just being really transparent, saying, look, I'm under offer for this other position. I'd really like to see what the outcome of this role is before making a decision. Is there any chance that we can have a decision earlier, or that I can be let know the outcome as soon as possible, so that you can make it as an informed decision as you can, really. But it is tricky to juggle. Yeah. What is the investment to have a career coaching session?
You want me to answer that one, Gordon?
Yep, sure.
I think there's two ways of looking at this. I think is what is the loss by not having the career coaching session as well. So I think you need to weigh that up. And would you regret not knowing? So that's just, I think, the flip side of the coin. If you want it for us, it could be as little as 30 minutes just to have that initial call with Gordon or one of our coaches. And so that, is we're $325 an hour. So half of that. Okay, now I would recommend you could start off with 30 minutes to an hour and at least get a go ahead. And if you think about the actual cost of setting yourself up going forward, you can actually get quite a bit of information, Gordon, within that, 30 minutes to 60 minutes, just to get the ball rolling and then take it from there.
Yeah, and when the market's really challenging, then go to specialists. If you need accounting advice, go to an accountant. If you need legal advice, go to a lawyer. If you're wanting to put your best foot forward, then Career Coaches provides you that opportunity.
I wouldn't recommend having a conversation with your nearest and dearest other than, general conversation about where to, but we often find that coaching, and we're coaches, we're not softly. We're here to provide, rock solid guidance as coaches. So sometimes having those difficult conversations is particularly difficult with family and friends as well. And it can be quite biased. So you might not be hearing the truth. It's a little bit like Simon Cowell, who told you could sing? Oh, my mum. Really? So, I think, keep it real.
I'm just conscious of the time. Do we have time for a couple more questions, do you think?
Yep, I'm okay for another 5 minutes. Gordon?
Yes, sure.
How do you structure your CV to focus on where you want to be rather than where you have been? I think this was part of the actions discussion.
Okay, so it's around your first page of your CV needs to sell you. So you definitely need to have a statement in there under the intro of my next role will be. And we've often brought up before about don't assume that recruiters and hiring managers or those responsible for screening you are going to read your cover letter, which might include where you're going to be in your next role. The other thing is thinking about the achievements and the skills. We're very focused on making sure that we have robust achievements and so on that are evidencing your skills and strengths on the first page and thinking about how they will feed into your next role. We all have quite a significant number of, or most of us have a significant number of achievements once we've started working on those and correlating them back to what we've delivered in our, or available to go into our CV. It's about putting the right achievements in your CV. So they need to reflect where you want to be, not just where you've been. So for example, years and years and years ago, I used to lecture and provide expertise in computer-aided design. I would not put that in my CV now. Okay, number one, because it's more than 15 years ago, so we only go back 10 to 15 years. But it also, I don't want to give people the impression that that's where I want to be, that's the role I want to have.
What have we got here? I'm hesitant to activate my LinkedIn due to my company, where it's not only the staff, but also higher up who are always checking on all employees' profiles to see who's applying elsewhere. Any advice?
I get this one particularly from human resource directors that I coach because if suddenly there's significant changes to your LinkedIn profile or there's been no profile and then you create one, then some people in your organisation, if they're watching LinkedIn, might think that you're becoming proactive. But I think it's, as we said before, LinkedIn is so prevalent, so it's not unreasonable to have a LinkedIn profile, and that's a reflection of your CV, and then you can be tweaking it over time to orientate it more towards where you want to go in the future if you wish, and you can go softly with that. So I know HR directors that kind of do one little change per week that nobody's really going to notice, turn their notifications off, and it's just slowly tweaking and evolving their CV. So I think it's unreasonable if employers don't expect you to have a LinkedIn profile or frowned on it. They're ubiquitous.
Yeah. I have recently relocated to Wellington. I have handled a senior management roles in my country, and many people suggested that I should target lower level jobs to start off. What's your advice?
Nikki and Kirsty, how would you deal with that as recruitment professionals?
Yeah, it probably is a little bit dependent on the specialism or area that you work in. It's not necessarily always true that you would need to start at a lower level. I guess it depends whether there are particular technical knowledge or legislative understanding, or and sort of how transferable your experience is to the Wellington market from where you've been working previously. Sometimes it can be useful to go in at a slightly lower level to gain a good understanding as to the culture of the organisation and to get your head around the industry in Wellington. But yeah, equally, it's not always the case, so it probably would be hard to make a definite call on that without knowing what area you work in.
I'd also add to make sure that you have a CV in a format that's common within New Zealand. You might be coming from another market where CVs are in a different format, so work on getting a CV that's consistent, common format for New Zealand. It just reduces the differences.
Yeah, I've been working with a client just recently, and she's applying for a senior role in the US. That's 1 page. In the UK, it's 2 pages. In New Zealand, Nikki and Kirsty, I think we'd agree it's sort of like 4 pages, 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah.
The other thing to make sure on that is to make sure that your CV floats to the top. And when people say, oh, no, I only want to see 1 or 2 pages, I'm thinking of the candidates that are applying for jobs and not making it past the applicant tracking systems. And they're in the CV not floating to the top because very clearly they don't have the content in their CVs that are going to match the 4 to 5 page CV of New Zealand.
Yeah, definitely. On that same train, a question about how you stand out in a candidate flooded market, other than getting your CV and cover letters on point and networking. Any other tips? Yeah, I guess one of the important things is that building a relationship with recruiters and doing that, as Gordon has said, around doing that before you apply for jobs, so that when your application does come through, the recruiter will know exactly who you are, what you're looking to do with your career, and what the things are that were going to drive you to apply for a role. I think that always stands out for me. Yeah. One thing I find challenging is that advice regarding CV presentation is, in my opinion, conflicting. How do you work out what and how to present?
It's very true. It is. What goes on your front page, what doesn't go on your front page. We tend to listen to recruitment consultants and hiring managers as to what goes on your front page and page 2, 3, and 4. And that's how we've come up with the format that we use. You're always going to get some recruiters wanting something different from others. I would listen to the recruiter and provide them with the format that they want. They know their clients best. So think about how they do it. It's very subjective. Again, I'll come back to what I said before. If you're asking friends and family, does it look pretty? Well, some people like green, some people hate it. Some people want lots of graphics. By the way, infographics, complete waste of time. Don't use them on a CV. I've seen some formats of CVs that are presented like an infographic. An applicant tracking system will not float an infographic to the top. Okay? So we tend to go for a very plain, we focus on the plain text format to start with, then we look at the aesthetics. What's more important is telling your story and getting your value proposition across very quickly on the first page.
Looks like one final one here. I am a registered counsellor in New Zealand, but still struggling to get a job. I have more than 20 years of experience in counselling and teaching. Kindly guide me so that I can get a job in New Zealand.
It's going to be networking and joining professional associations, maybe taking some interim work. I mean, it's sad to hear that that's the case and a waste of wonderful experience and skills that you've got. But I think doing those things, starting to build your network, starting to volunteer for things, to join groups of things. I've seen others coming into New Zealand do that and have success. So it'll be networks, professional associations, joining groups where decision makers are that are relevant to your particular profession and career.
I think what we're seeing a lot at the moment, Gordon and Nikki and Kirsty, is the fractional or portfolio career. And so particularly in your area of counselling, it may be that you look at several different organisations that can afford a part of you, but not all of you. So that may be a way of getting around that as well. Just be open to that fractionality.
Seeing a lot of portfolio work, a number of paid part-time roles.
Okay, I think that takes us to the end of the questions.
Right, okay. So that wraps up today. So thank you very much for all of you who have come on. It's been an enormous turnout today. We're really appreciative of you taking the time to listen and watch in on the presentation. Do think about that networking piece, but also think about a lot, obviously, of the due diligence internally and externally, and share that, with your coach and with your recruitment consultant. The other thing is to reach out to Gordon. We'll be sending an email out to all attendees and registrants of today's webinar. And in that email, I'll have links through to Gordon so that you can contact Gordon if you would like to have a further conversation. And similarly to Nikki and Kirsty, if you want to have a conversation around recruitment and what you could be doing there to make their job easier. And when, as people mentioned earlier as well, how do you get front of mind with recruiters too? So be cognizant of that. Kirsty and Nikki, have you got anything to add in closing?
No, disagree with what you said. Really welcome any contact, and anyone that wants any advice or support with their job hunt, feel free to get in touch with us as well.
Yeah, and just on that slide there, we've got a link to our blog where we've got lots of useful blogs about job seeking and tips on various things. So definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, and connect with Gordon on LinkedIn. Those of you who don't have a problem with LinkedIn, connect. Gordon he puts some fantastic posts up. He's just about to launch a new one. Gordon's insights come through really well and get great engagement. And same with Nikki and Kirsty, as I mentioned, got a great newsletter, sort of like blog presence on LinkedIn as well. So keep in touch. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll say goodbye now.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.